Ayin Beis, Volume 1, Discourse 7, Chapter 27, page 43. Many different descriptions for this study. Okay. So now he's going to revert back to the nimshal, as it's called. The mashal was the example. There's the two examples that are the operative examples right now to understand the tzimtzum, the concealment or the diminishment of how the spheres are in their root in the divine vision, in the cosmic vision of the artist, and how they emerge as defined realities, as the defined beings in the revealed spheres. So if you take away all the Hebrew words, basically it comes down to, think of it like the divine unconscious, the cosmic unconscious, and how that becomes something that's conscious. So it's a journey from the unconscious to the conscious. So the dilemma here is, on one hand, the conscious is rooted in the unconscious. On the other hand, it's in a completely different state of being. So the challenge is how to explain that. Two examples are being used. One is a letter of a word. So the word would be the unconscious, or the Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. That's called the root of the energies within the hidden spheres before the Tzimtzum. That's the unconscious. The letter would be the letter that emerges, the Beis of Baruch. And the second example being used is a detail of a general concept. The general concept being the unconscious in this analogy, and the specific detail being what we are relating to. And explaining now the context of the first example, letters, in last chapter 26, the discussion was basically an analysis of Shayuchad V'Hamuna. Tanya, section 2, which is the second book of Tanya, Shayuchad V'Hamuna, chapter 12. And the analysis consisted of the words that he uses there to describe what's in a word. The power of a wordsmith, you can say, the wisdom. And essentially, it goes like this. The language in the Tanya was, every letter is a transmission of a particular force, a particular energy. When letters come together, besides the combination of each of those energies, something Eilal Kolona, a synergy emerges. That is the general, all-encompassing energy, and goes above them and has the power to combine and unite them. And the analysis essentially is that this Eilal Kolona, the higher force, is not just the meaning of the word that is only possible when you have the letters together, but it's an additional wisdom, not the wisdom of the concept, but the wisdom of how to express a concept, how to convey a concept. And he brings several different proofs to that, to demonstrate that. One, that you see the same idea can be conveyed in different words. Tosfos, Rosh, and Ran each conveyed it differently. Two, you see a child who may understand the idea but doesn't yet have the words. An adult who understands the concept and within himself, but it requires a different framework, a different series of words, sirufim, different combinations to express it to someone else. And then there are people who can understand something and not explain it to someone else. All demonstrates that there's a deeper wisdom than just the wisdom within the word. The wisdom of combining letters in a proper way that convey. And he says that comes from the Chokhmah, from Bina, from Moichin the Abba, Moichin the Gadlus. Bina is the understanding of the word. This is Chachma, or from the Etzem HaNefesh, Yechida of the Nefesh. And then he concludes that the two languages in Tanya, the Koyach Elyon and Chayis Kloli, one is the Etzem, is the essence of the internalized energy of a concept, as it's in its root. And Chayis Kloli is some type of, or Makif, he says that's the difference between Yechida and Chaya, without explaining much. So now he's going to go back, after this example, he's going to go back to explain it all in context of what's the point of all this. So we're learning chapter 27. We can say the example of this In the 10 hidden spheres that were encompassed, submerged, included within the infinite divine light before the Tzimtzum, Shayu B'chinas Eiris, Shayu B'chinas Achdus, they were on a level of unity, they're all combined. Does Hayu B'hem Gili Eir. And in that state, they have a revelation of energy. He's saying that as in the statement we're talking now, for example, when the letters are together in a word. He's going to explain now the Shayach V'Amunah, everything that happens in the same context in the 10 hidden spheres. As we discussed earlier, chapters 23 and 25. So bottom line is like this. The example is for the hidden spheres as they are encompassed in the infinite divine light before the Tzimtzum. They were all united there. And therefore they had this revelation of energy because they're all united. Everything is revealed there. Again, we have to always qualify that we're not talking about actual spheres, we're talking about how the spheres are in the vision of the artist. Now, in addition to the energy that was within them in a manifest way, in an internalized, integrated way, because we're talking here about pnimis, we're not talking about makif, we're not talking about an energy, we're talking about the sheirish, the root of the energy that will manifest in containers. Eris premium, in other words. And those energies have in them, as he's been discussing, relatively speaking, in Atzilut, some form of particle, some personality, amorphous relative to the containers. In the 10 hidden spheres, it's complete pshitus. There's not no particles at all. But it's the root of what will become later particles, or personalities. So the parentheses, that is because that is the purpose. That is the higher purpose. That Atzilut, there should be 10 spheres, and also the kavanah b'mashein esudavka, that there should be specifically 10. As we discussed earlier, chapter 25. What did we say there? That the kavanah is there should be Atzilut, and there should be 10 spheres. That's the intention as it is in the hidden spheres. And later, when the spheres are revealed, they reveal that fact to us. So in addition to this energy that's within these hidden spheres, in addition to that, they have in them also an er klali, an all-encompassing energy, a general energy. Ha'el al kolana, that rises above them all. Because remember, the chiddush, as you said, the meaning in the Shayach V'Amunah is not just that we're talking about the combination. Baruch, for example, Beis Reish Vav Chav. So yes, the Beis Reish Vav Chav is more than the sum of the parts. That's already Er al kolana. You have there more than just the sum of 4 letters. You have a meaning called blessing. But the Chiddush he said was more than that. He said that we're talking about an additional energy. Page 43. An additional energy which is coming from the power of Mitzaref, the power, the wisdom to combine the letters precisely and specifically in this particular way. So this is also in the hidden spheres. So now we're saying there's 2 basic energies within the hidden spheres. The Yeshlemer, within the unconscious itself. The Yeshlemer, because we can say, Sheimeir aleim begili ha'er, shebchinas erin sof, shebchinas bligvul mamish. That the hidden spheres, besides having the sum total of all the spheres, and the kavanah that was in them, they also have in them the revelation of the infinite divine light that's literally bligvul mamish. Because if you remember, we spoke about earlier that there are really 3 levels. There's Eir, that's complete pshitas, there's no spheres altogether there. There's Eir that has spheres ein ketz, infinite amount of spheres, and many infinite combinations. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are, that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will become the structure as we know it. And then there's the 10 hidden spheres that are the root of what will So being that the hidden spheres are before the Tzimtzum in the unconscious, so even though they are really the root of what will be coming later, but they also carry within them an energy that's beyond them, the energy of the infinite. So let me explain it with the example I was using with the artist. When we look at a piece of art, or we look at a page in Ayin Beis, for that matter, you see a piece of a puzzle, a conscious piece that the artist conveyed to us. And in this page is part of the whole picture. The artist, or the composer, or the author knows the whole picture when he wrote it. When he looks at the page and I look at the page, or we look at the page, we don't see the same. We see the same page, but one sees immediately the bigger picture. The artist does, and so on. Okay. Now, but you could argue that the page is only telling you part of what the whole picture of this Ayin Beis is. Doesn't tell you everything that the Rebbe Rashab had in his whole life, in his mind. He's a human being, a Rebbe that's far beyond just being an artist of just writing a Hemshech Ayin Beis. I mean, I have to qualify that because you can say writing Torah is anon nafshik sovis yehovis. He gives his whole essence into it. But let's use the example of a real artist. An artist makes a painting. The painting may reflect one part of his intention. He may make 1,000 other paintings. The Rebbe Rashab wrote many Hamshech. So you could argue, you could hypothetically say that yes, the way it's in the artist, and especially in his unconscious, before he wrote it, he has it all, the vision of all the pages. Then it emerges. We work our way backwards from page. We slowly build the picture, and we get back to the picture. But what's the picture? It's a synergy that's more than the sum of the parts, but it's Hemshech Ayin Beis. However, he's saying no, more than that. That just like a word doesn't just have the synergy of the letters Baruch, but it has also a higher wisdom, a wisdom of how it's combined this way. So within there's also the energy of the artist that's beyond the painting, so to speak. So within that hidden spheres, even though God envisioned, I want to have 10 spheres, and that envisioning is the hidden spheres, but remember, God is not bound to 10 spheres. So the same God that envisions 10 spheres also has dimensions that are beyond 10 spheres, infinite spheres, and there's no spheres altogether. All that is also in some way concealed and they're present in the hidden spheres. So when the hidden spheres are, let's put it this way, when it comes out on the conscious level, you could argue, all I see are pieces. I see a beis, a reish, a vav, a chaf, a page, a piece of a picture. In the unconscious, because it's connected to the source of who is conceiving of this vision, so the unconscious picture, even of a specific picture, contains also the rest of the rest. I don't know all, but a big part. Also, the infinite powers that precede and transcend even the unconscious concept of creating this particular painting.
It's the core potential.
Everything is a potential state, but it's a state. It's a state. Remember, there's a structure. Even in the unconscious, because Hashem, God, wants us to retrace the steps and have a relationship. In other words, let's put it this way. On a human level, when you envision, you have a business idea or creative idea. Right now, the idea is completely in your imagination. It could end up being a complete figment of your imagination, remaining there. But let's, for argument's sake, it's an idea that will come to reality. And that once you put it down on paper and make a blueprint, is going to reflect piece by piece exactly as you envisioned it. Okay? So there's a relationship between the actual structure, let's say the building, and the blueprint, and the vision. The question is, there a relationship also to the part of you that's beyond your vision for this particular structure? Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes. Even in the human level it is, because you have to say an artist, even though he's making one painting, in it, we may not have the wisdom to see it, in it you can also see more of him than what he invested in there, because it's coming from, why did his unconscious choose to make this painting and not another one? With God, for sure, is that way, because his intention is to be revealed. So, even in creating, let's put it this way: when you look at the world, and someone say, "I look at the world, is God the sum of the parts? The trees, the beauty, the mineral, vegetable, animal, man, all the species." So we say, "Hu mekayme shaleilam ve'ena elam mekayme." Not like Spinoza's pantheism where nature is God and God is nature. God forbid. Nature is God, but God is not nature. But someone will say to you, okay, from nature, how much can I know of God? You'll say, we know Elokim. We know how God manifests in nature. But is that it? The answer is no. If you study it well, since God is one, Hashem hu Elokim, you can discover, maybe through extrapolation, through Yediyas Hashlila, that there's more. You can even discover dimensions that are more than just the God that manifested in the universe. And Hashem wants it that way. He hid his presence here. And there are ways to reveal a higher presence. So in other words, even within the spheres of the structure of existence lays and contains levels that are beyond the spheres. That's essentially the bottom line. The example is the letters of the word. I mean, it's very powerful. Does there have to be? And nothing has to be with God. God can do the whole thing, doesn't need unconscious altogether. He could just speak and there's a world and poof. The problem is we have no way in the structure that He created. The fact that He created such a structure tells us that this structure is meaningful to Him. For some reason, a logical structure, even though He's not logic, but choosing logic tells you also something about Him. That logic is something that the divine wants. And the divine manifests in. So, I think Gershom Ber Pahara, my father's namesake, I once heard the analogy, there are three people looking at a painting of a field. So one says, oh, this man who made this painting must be a great farmer. Another one says, no, he must be a great artist, because look at the beauty he made. And the third one said, no, he's a great artist that is beyond art and beyond farm, and that's why you can see both of them. So the farmer knows his world. The artist can envision something outside of himself. But it's not him, he's not a farmer. And then there's one at the level of Elikus that in the picture, in the world, in the farm, you also see not just that he's an artist, but you also see that he's beyond it all, and it's also within the farm. In other words, it comes down to the unity that we do ultimately connect to all levels. Okay. Okay, so that's what we said now. That in the words, in the letters combined, there's an energy that's higher than the sum of the parts of the word itself. And that in the Essence Sagnus, it says not just that they are in the root and therefore they appreciate the depth of this entire picture, but they have within them something beyond the picture, the blig vul mamish. They had Tzimtzum, and through the concealment, through the Tzimtzum, lias nimshach sfira achas levada, which caused the transmission of one individual sphere, meaning one detail of the 10. So now here's the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum also has therefore two effects. Besides the fact that it diminished the pnimi, meaning the way the artist understands the details of this hemshech or of this art is far greater than the way the recipient understands it. So besides that diminishment, which is a diminishing from the way the artist sees the picture to the way we see it, oidzes is another diminishment. There was also the removal and the concealment of the higher energy of the bligvul. So when we look at the page, we're really missing two things. Not missing, but we have a limited view of two things. One, we have a limited vision of the whole picture, even of the Pnimi part. Like, for example, here's the whole Hemshech Ayin Beis. You look at one page, there's no way that one page that you look at, you understand from it the way the Rebbe Rashab would understand that page. But there's another diminishment, it's a diminishing of that which is beyond all the pages. The Bligvul part. The El Al Kulana. Vihine, now, the Moshel, the Tevis Baruch Hanal, the example that we gave before from the word Baruch is Beis Reish Vav Chav. Kishemafridim Eis Aleph Mehateva, when you separate one letter from the word, automatically, inevitably, the Eir El Al Kulam for sure is disappears. Because,
Not totally. It's going to diminish it to an extent.
One second, let's see. Because 1 second, once you have, here you go. Of course, two things are happening. When you look at the word Baruch, we just said there's two things. Besides, one thing is that you have now a new word. that is more than just a Beis, Reish, Vav, and Chaf. What is this new word? It has the meaning of blessing and all the levels of meaning and the spiritual meanings. Volumes can be written on the word bracha. The word Beis, take it outside of Baruch, has no clue. We're not getting now whether there's a Reish or not. I'm just saying the letter Beis. So number one, it doesn't have the meaning of the word. But also he's saying, and automatically it doesn't have which is beyond the meaning, which is the power that combines all the letters, like he called it Meich the Abba, automatically disappears, because it's now separate. A letter that's separate from a word doesn't have any of the energies that comes from its combination with other words, both the meaning of the word, which is the Sheirish Aver Pnimi, the root of the internal energy, and also the Bligvul that he's saying, the thing that's beyond. The previous chapter is a whole chapter, as I was elaborating before, that talks about that there's a synergy beyond the synergy. There's two synergies. One is a synergy of a word, and one is a synergy of the ability to compose this word and not another word. Because the same word, like he said, the Odain, you can use the word Melech. He brought the Tesus, Ran, and Rosh, say the same idea in different words. He brought a whole bunch of proofs to demonstrate. So what he's saying is now, he's going back to the Mashal. In the Mashal he says, automatically, also the higher synergy disappears, mistalik. He's basically distinguishing between the example and the nimshal, and what the example is on. In the example, it's an inevitable, natural thing. It just doesn't there's no two steps. He's going to say in the Esther Sagnuzes, it is two steps. Meaning two actual things are happening. Well, Lamaila Ayin Beis Tzimtzumim. So in Lamato, meaning when we look at a letter, you take away a letter, obviously you don't have the word, and you also definitely don't have the higher force. In Lamaila, for the Tzimtzum, the two Tzimtzumim, there are two Tzimtzumim. In other words, there's two forces at work, almost like two-step process. Ha'echad is the Tzimtzum Ein Sof. The first one, the one is the concealment of the infinite. One is that the higher synergy, the one, the Bligvul, the infinite force, should be nostalgic, should be removed, v'nesalam and concealed, be included, it returns or it becomes encompassed in Atzmus, or in its essence. And the second is the concealment and the diminishment in the root and the source of the kav. That one sphere should emerge and not all of them combined. So in the letter, we can't really see the distinction. You don't see two steps. Either it's a Beis of Baruch or it's not a Beis of Baruch. We can understand that two things are being diminished, but when a Beis is outside of the word, automatically you have two things happening. One, you don't have a word, and you definitely don't have a higher energy. He says, Lamaila, it's two steps. One, there's a concealment. The Tzimtzum conceals the Bligvul. So you don't see the part of the artist that's beyond the art, and then even the root of the art, Kav is the structure, obviously. Kav is the carrier. Even the root of the Kav, even that also has a concealment. And what's that concealment? That only one sphere emerges, and not all of them together. Okay.
So apparently the first symptom is the Haor
Bligvul. Yeah.
And the second one
is the within the root of the of the bar, like Baruch, like the meaning of the word Baruch, for example. V'yesh leima, now we can say we can say that when the Bligvul Mamish, the higher Eir al Kulana, was radiating the infinite, the literal, he keeps saying Mamish. Why does he say Mamish? Because he's not talking about, because all of them are Bligvul, remember. Because they're all Lifnei Tzimtzum. But one is Bligvul that's relative, so to speak, and one is Bligvul that's real Bligvul. Because one, Esesphiris Agnuzes, at the end of the day, it says Esesphiris. Yes, it's true. It's in God's mind. It's only a vision. It's God's will. It's how He envisions what's going to be. But He's envisioning 10 and not infinite. And just to use a basic example in relationships. Two people really in love with each other. The question is, how deep do they really get connected? We all know that there's a part in a person that doesn't even emerge even to yourself. The deepest part of your soul. So we say this is a soulmate. Is a soulmate all the way to the etzem nefesh, or is it only? No, we understand it's more than just what you speak with the other person. It's more than just what you feel, and more than what you, because there's a deeper connection. There's a kedushin, there's a third partner, there's a soul connection. But how deep does it go? What about the part of you that you don't ever express? Doesn't ever express. The part of you that you express, obviously, you share with someone else your life. But the part you never express, liba lepuma legalia. As I said, even to yourself, your own unconscious. Is your unconscious connected to the unconscious of your spouse? That's a good way to put it. The answer is absolutely. Well, first of all, because why? Because, it's not because of our effort, because that's what real love, I'm talking about real love in a healthy relationship, obviously. Because that's the way God made it. He said, I'm letting you connect, not just in the things that you consciously can connect with, and things you can speak about. And even there are levels that we have to communicate. But even the part that is the bligvul of you, so to speak, that is really almost exclusively yours, because it's not even expressed anywhere. It's not expressed in your relationship in any conscious way. Even that also manifests. But in order for existence to be, God conceals that part. So when we see an individual sphere, two concealments are taking place. One, the sphere is only one page instead of an entire book. And even the part that's beyond the book, or not even, also the part beyond the book is also concealed, and so on. But in the essence of the they're all there. See, the point here, even though he's emphasizing the concealment part, obviously the goal is to understand that it's still there somewhere. Because what's the point? Just to tell us that it was there and then taken away? It's like when we teach a child the entire Torah in its mother's womb. And then there's a tzimtzum, complete concealment. So the Alter Rebbe makes it clear. What's the point of teaching? The answer is because it's really there unconscious, except you couldn't survive if it was revealed. So you have to grow slowly, acclimate yourself, build, expand your containers till you make it part of you. So at the end of the day, he's not saying it right now, but he will say the revealed spheres have everything from the hidden spheres, even the parts that were concealed. However, for the spheres to emerge, you need this two-step process is the necessary.
Even if it's called the siluk, will have something remaining.
Well, we know that because even Tzimtzum, from the containers will ultimately become containers for everything. But now we're still talking the process of how it comes to be. Okay. Okay. 1 second. We could say the Keshaya Mera Era Bligvul Mamish. That when in the 10 hidden spheres, when the energy, the Bligvul Mamish, the higher, the Al-Kolona, the higher synergy, was radiating, in that state, even though he's speaking Lashon Avar, past, because he's talking about not real time, he means that stage before it becomes the next stage. Because right now we also have hidden spheres. All this is happening all the time. So he's saying that in that stage, the hidden spheres were completely subjugated, completely sublimated, completely. Like the light of the sun, the rays of the sun within the sun. As we discussed earlier, chapter 18. And that's why first there was a tzimtzum that concealed this infinite light. And then the second tzimtzum, the concealment that concealed the hidden spheres, that only one sphere should emerge and not all. So that's the order. So in other words, when you work from the top down, it works the other way around. Think of it like this. Here's the artist, before he's envisioning anything. Again, before is only conceptually. He has not yet envisioned that he's going to write Hemshech Ayin Beis. There's a state like that. Then there comes the day where he begins to start thinking and contemplating, I'm going to write this composition, this discourse. And it's going to be filled with thousands of details and so on and so forth. Then he begins to write. And then it's published. We have it now. We work our way backwards, from the bottom up. We learn page by page, and we're trying to figure out. But let's for a moment go the other way around. How did it come into being? So it came into being that there was Eir HaBligvul. There's a Bligvul state. Again, I'm using an example of human, but it's similar. It's amorphous. There's not even the structure. There's not even the vision of it. I don't even begin to imagine it. That then manifests in a specific vision. That vision, while it's all still in that unconscious, it's all, as I said, completely sublimated in the Bligvul. Even though, if you dissect it, you'd say, 1 second, are you thinking already about this particular work? Yeah. But the way you think about it there is so connected to the rest of you that it's all, as he said, bottle. So the first concealment for anything to happen is he has to separate, so to speak, between his Bligvul and his vision of the Gvul. Not the Gvul yet, it's a vision of this particular. So right now I'm going to be focusing, it's like a teacher who has to put all his ideas aside. I'm going to now be teaching you this page, or this book. I'm going to be writing and teaching this book. So that's the first concealment. The Bligvul is concealed from, then comes the second thing. Now, how do we get from the vision of the composition into an actual composition that you and I can relate to? And that's the Tzimtzum that he's calling the Tzimtzum in the spheratic, meaning in the Shoshei Ha'eris, the Tzimtzum that allows the Kav to emerge. For Inyan Hu, and the Inyan in this is, and the parenthesis, it's Ayin Mashakoseh B'Lekutei Torah. Explore or delve into what it says Lekutei Torah Ba'Bir Habeis de Shchira Ani. In the second bir, it's in Shir Shirim, Shchira Ani, Seif Perek Aleph, end of chapter 1. So if we really learn this properly, we would open up Lekutei Torah now and look what it says there. As it is, I'll look it up and I'll let you know what I find. The Hinin is Bar Le'il. He's now explaining this whole thing. The Hine now, because we discussed earlier, Perek Tazayin, chapter 16, that the 10 spheres, you see how it fits to the example I'm giving, is Aliyah Sarotzen. They're the level where already rose in his will that he wants existence. The artist has decided this is what he wants. We're not talking about the artist on his own before there's any vision like that. That in his formless and seamless and shapeless will arose that he wants something specific. This is what we discussed earlier, chapter 16. And the Bligvul energy is what is the level before it arose in his will. Just for the record, this is critical in the whole Hemshech Ayin Beis. Because the whole Hemshech began, if you go back to chapter 1, with this. How does an Etzem manifest? Keser is the first interface, because Keser is Ratzon. If the essence of the unconscious doesn't want and desire something, you're going nowhere. So Kedem Aleisa Ratzon is like before Keser, and Aleisa Ratzon is Keser. Though he's not using those words here, I just want to connect it. So we have two levels, which we just discussed as well. One is Aleisa Ratzon, where it arose in the artist's will and desire, and one is before, which is the Bligvul. And there, the Sfiras Adein Ketz, it's not 10, and there's no limit to them, and there's no shape and form and nothing. And we explained there, this is very, very fundamental here. That these two things are the root and source of what would later become Seviv Kalamin, the energy that surrounds the worlds, Umamalakam, the energy that permeates. It's obvious which is which. The Kedem Aleisa Ratzon is the Bligvul, is the root of Seviv Kalamin, and the Aleisa Ratzon, what it desires, is the root of Gvul. So think of it like everything we know. Remember, it's the challenge here is, just like I say it, I want to state it even though I've said it 100 times, the challenge here is not to think the way we think about things. We think about things, it's either physical, either it's a shape or it's not a shape. It's not that way. There's really two states in everything. There's the vision and there's the actual. Even in a human being. You imagine something and then you go and act on it. You plan something in your mind and you act on it. So, right here, see, we live in a tangible world, so everything is tangible and then everything else is somewhat abstract. Remember, from Atzmus, everything is backwards. It starts from abstract and then it becomes tangible. So, or even beyond abstract. So that's the root of Sev Mala. Haklulim be'erein Sev Baruch Hu. This is the root and the source of Seviv Mamala, as they're encompassed in the infinite divine light. As like he says at length, discusses this at length in the Drush, the famous Samach Vav, which is, as we know, a twin to Ayin Beis, said 6 years earlier. Samach Vav.
After Tzimtzum Arish, correct? All these are after Tzimtzum Arish.
Seviv Mamala?
No, that's yeah. So not the source of the.
He's talking the source, how they are.
The source of them is also after the Tzimtzum.
No, the source before the Tzimtzum. This is all before the Tzimtzum here.
Because here it just said that
yeah, then starts a new discussion. No, 1 second. Then starts a new discussion by Inyan who he's speaking. This is before the Tzimtzum. Inyan who he's now explaining. He's going back to explain the whole thing. He finished with that. The Tzimtzum happened. Okay. V'hinei. Now he's explaining this. This is a full explanation. He's coming full circle here. V'hinei, and now. The Eir Mamala doesn't just come, that also comes from the Eir HaSeviv. In other words, when we say the root, it's not like Atzmus. Let me explain. We learned before that the Kav, even though the Kalim have a root beyond an energy, but it's the energy that brings the Kalim into being. Just like this body has a root besides the soul, but it's upon the conception of a seed, it's fertilized, the conception of a child, the soul makes the seed grow. So the same is true that even though Mal and Seviv have two roots, Eir HaBligvul, Eir HaGvul, so to speak, but even the Eir HaGvul comes through the Eir HaBligvul. In other words, everything starts from the Eir in general. That Eir will divide into two Eirs. One is Kedem Alei Saratzen, before it rose in his will, and the one is rising in the will, and that will be the root of Mal and Seviv. So now he's saying, Eir HaMala Nimshach M'chinas Eir HaSeviv comes from Eir HaSeviv. This is critical for the ultimate unity of it all. It's not just two separate parallel worlds. They're two separate energies, but they're rooted in the same place. So now he's going to explain. And according to what we explained here, we have to say the Ein Zeh M'chinas Eir HaSeviv Mamash. That when we say Mamalakam, it comes from Seviv. It's not literally from Seviv. Hainu M'chinas Chitzenis Eir HaBligvul. In other words, it's not like so-called the outer surface level of the infinite light. Kim shekol ba'er haseviv. Shekolol. Kim shekolol ba'er haseviv. He's saying that it's kolol there. It's included there, but it's not rooted there. Let's read. We'll see. Okay, what he's qualifying here basically is saying the following: that since we're talking about two roots, so even though the Eir HaMamala, which is like the Eir of the 10 hidden spheres, comes from the Seviv, but you can interpret it two ways. You could say it actually comes from it, meaning first it's infinite light, and the outer of the infinite becomes finite light. He's saying no, it's not that way. It's a separate type of energy. However, like the 10 hidden spheres in the sun, it's like the rays of the sun within the sun. Before the Tzimtzum, they're part of the Bligvul unconscious. In other words, the part of the artist that envisions the art, you could argue, is really just an extension of his infinite part that now is chosen to be. Says no, it is a distinct entity, but within his unconscious, it's all one. So it's kolol there instead of it being an expression of it. That's essentially what he's distinguishing here. So even though it's not literally rooted there, it's rooted in its own source, Mamala, but it's definitely completely encompassed there and completely united with this infinite in Ein Zeh Baruch Hu. In other words, there's no two. Before the Tzimtzum, you're not going to find two. The Alei Saratzen and Kedem Alei Saratzen, Eir HaBligvul, Eir HaGvul are not going to be two separate entities. They're all in one, all encompassed in the one infinite light. Like it says elsewhere in the inyan of tzitzis. Shein min konof. When we make tzitzis, it has to be min konof, which is same material as the konof, as the edge of the garment. Yeah. Even though you cannot make them. They have to be separate. You can't like say, take the edges of a talus cotton of the garment and just cut it in parts. It has min konov, but not the konov itself. She'ena konov mamish, the konov from talus. The konov, which is the edge, abekamphis, it's the edge of the garment of the talus. Shezo b'chinas levush meloshen, zo b'chinas levush malchus b'chinas seviv kalam. That the konov itself, the garment itself, is levush malchus, is seviv kalam. Talus, it surrounds you. And we know it's tzitzis. V'alamed beis chutin did tzitzis, and the 32 strands, the 32 knots of the tzitzis, shein lamed beis nesivis chochma. That's not keser, not seviv klamen. They're the 32 paths of wisdom. The b'shoshen hin ha'esas sfiras hagnuzis. In their root, this is the head of the sphere. Sherish b'chinas malak klamen. Einen ma'akonaf mamish. They're not from the actual garment. Shu b'chinas erin seif abligvul, which is the infinite light. He's giving a beautiful example from tzitzis. It's min konov. Means it's the same. It comes from the same personality, but it's a separate entity. And tzitzis is mamala kalaman, and talus is makif primi seva kalaman. That's why tzitzis are strands. They like strands of hair. They draw the from the level of the makif into the primis. Yeah. But okay, so they're not konov mamash, but they're min. Nevertheless, nevertheless, they are bound and united with the garment. They min konov. So two things. First of all, they're bound to it. They're connected, and second of all, they're from the same. What do we say? The same properties, the same material. Right. What time do we have? V'hainu, now in the parentheses he adds, V'hainu she'ein ze kamei sharshi hakelim. This is a very important qualification. I see this parentheses is not a short one. Actually, it goes to the end of the chapter? No. Yeah. So let's go. This is not like the root of the containers. As he's going to explain, the root of the containers are not min kanaf. This is not like the root of the containers are klul and beid and sof, as they're encompassed in the infinite light. Even though the containers, the way they're encompassed there, they're also literally ein seif, infinite. But at the end of the day, they're just letters. But the root of the energies are actual energy. And we can say, just like in Atzilut, he's explaining the difference between Eris and Kelim here in the root. Just like in Atzilut, we say in Tikkun Ezer, Iyu v'chayu echad, Iyu v'gamu echad. We say, he and his energy is one. He and his Kelim containers are one. Before he reconciled that with Rizal that says, Chayu is Meichen, intelligence, intellect, and Gamui is Midas. So what do we say? Why does it say twice? Iyu v'chayu echad, Iyu v'gamu. Why doesn't it just say, Iyu v'chayu v'gamu echad? He says, Iyu v'chayu echad. He says, Shenemer beis pamim chad. Clearly identifying there's two different types of unity going on. Umavur become mekamis and explained in many places, in different places, in several places. That you cannot compare the unity of the containers to the unity of the energies. Containers that unite with the energies, they're like two separate things that become connected, become united. Aval yichud eir is b'maitzel elyon, but the unity of the energies with the emanator, the cosmic emanator, the supernal emanator, hu b'chinas yichud v'dveikus mamish. It's not two things that you bring together. It's a unity and a dveikus, and a cleaving, literally, mamish. Completely. Acha erhu me'ein hamoed, to the extent that energy is actually similar to the source, like min kanaf. So just like we explained it in Atzilut, you see constantly there's this comparison of how things are in Atzilut, and similarly in more subtle form, it's how it is before the Tzimtzum. The same thing we can say in its root and its source, in the energy, in infinite energy before the Tzimtzum, that the 10 spheres, that they're the root of Mamala Kalalmin, the 10 hidden spheres, that is. They are bound and united with the energy, the infinite energy of Seva Kalalmin, and they're Me'ein HaMoyer. They have within them a similarity to it. Like he said with the Tzitzis, that it's part of it. It's an extent. It's connected to the garment, to the makif, to the pnimi same Kalman, and it's min kanaf mein hamoyer. The gam shezeh b'chinas er pnimi, even though it's er pnimi, it's internal energy, and Sefer Kalman is not. And we just explained that they're not one. They're just one is encompassed in the other. Nevertheless, it's still me'ein. It's similar to its eir. As eir, it has a transcendent quality, and that means it's min kanaf, it's from the same material. So in other words, Seva and Mamala are similar in their transcendence. Kalim don't have transcendence. Kalim are identity. It's true, like he says, before the Tzimtzum, the Kalim are Ein Sof Mamish, because there's no Kali there. But let's put it this way. Let's go back to the example of the artist. The artist has the blik gvul of the artist, unconscious. There's the gvul, er ha-gvul of the artist. He's envisioning the art. But then he envisions, for me to make art, I need to have instruments. So the envisioning of the instruments is the koyach ha-gvul within the unconscious. But by nature, the koyach ha-gvul is obviously exactly what it is, an instrument. It does not, the instrument does not reflect the source in any revealed way. Whereas the vision of the artist, even though it's a limited vision to this particular piece of art, is mein hamoyer, and in that sense it has a commonality, it's transcendent in nature. Bottom line is, when they will emerge after the Tzimtzum, we're going to learn. The er ha-bli gvul is one that creates bittul. The er ha-gvul is one that creates a connection that is transcendent. And the and gvul itself just creates identity. If you only have kalim later, you won't be able to experience transcendence. The er ha-gvul helps containers experience transcendence on their terms. The er ha-bli gvul helps create transcendence on divine terms, which is bittul. This will be discussed a lot later. And we can say we can say this level, we're talking about er ha-gvul, the source of the kav, the root of the finite energies. You can say this is considered achreina shebein sof, which is of course a challenging word. Achreina means the lowest level of infinite light, which seems contradictory, but there's no levels there. But that's what it's called in order for us to be able to relate to it. It doesn't mean actual letter. Like it says, like it's written in Eitz Chaim Shah Gate 41 B'inyan Atik about Atik, that this is the ultimate, the lowest, the epitome, the lowest level. The utterly lowest level, Shvela, and Shvela is even, the inferior in Ein Sof. And as we already explained earlier, chapter 15, Perek Tezvav, that the 10 hidden spheres, that's Atik of Ak. So it all works. So in other words, the 10 hidden spheres is the Achreina, like Atik, of Ein Sof. The L'cheda ain't moving. Ma shaykh lehem b'chinas Achreina b'davar shem b'reish b'seif. Ostensibly, this is not understood at all. How could you say low, Achreina, the last, in a thing that has no beginning and end? Like it says in Eitz Chaim in the beginning, quoted earlier, cited earlier, that the infinite light that would fill the entire black hole, the entire space, empty space. It had no top and bottom, it had no above and below. It had no beginning, it had no end, no top, resh, no end, and no mila, no upper and lower. How could you suddenly say achrena? That is the end, achrena, the last. It's explained in Likutei Torah, in the explanation of Scherani. He quoted it earlier in the parentheses, the Bir Habeis. Scherani, the Hainu b'chinas what's Aleph of Reish? Emek v'rechev. No, not emek v'rechev. Erech v'rechev. Yeah, I think it's erech v'rechev. That is talking about the erech v'rechev of Ein Sof. That there's the length and the width of Ein Sof, metaphorically speaking. So he explains there that being that air is ultimately a reflection alone, it's not an essence. So it has in it dimensions. Spiritual dimensions, and that's the level of achrena. V'sham, and there he explains also the mashakos be'etz chaim b'chinas hayeser achrena, that what it says in Eitz Chaim, that it means the utterly lowest level. Ein hakavon al kol she'er is not referring. The intention there is not on the general energy. Kim shem b'chinas achrena sheber nimshach liyasatik. He's not referring to the general energy, just saying that from the lowest level of that energy you have atik. The Yeshlem Shuzah B'chinas Esses for a second. Luzah Shavin Niskal B'chinas Malaklam Shabein Sef Asef V'Klam Hadizeh B'chinas Hayes Achrein Shabein Sef. Because we can say that this is the level of the 10 hidden spheres, which is encompassed. So Shavin Niskal B'chinas Malaklam. That's the encompassment of Malaklam as it's encompassed in the infinite light of Sef V'Klam. That's the level. Hadizeh B'chinas Hayes Achrein Shabein Sef. That's the lowest level in Ein Sof. Bottom line is, well, it's not actual level. We don't have an actual level called lowest. We're talking about, relatively speaking, we're talking about a dimension where a rose in his will. So that's what we mean lowest, as in that there is a state here where the artist is envisioning the structure. This is kalus. What does it mean that mamala is included in the bligvul? In the infinite, is that this infinite light envisioned within himself the transmission of something that is finite. As I said, the infinite unconscious of the artist envisioned something that is going to be finite. Look before chapter 16, the Tzur Shaboy, the power within him, like the rock within him, is the source of the Havaya, the source of all the beings, from the name Havaya. This hashara, this envisioning, is the lowest, so to speak, element within the unconscious of the artist. And this is the level where it arose in his will. Now, this is the envisioning, above mentioned envisioning, in the infinite light, within the infinite light. This is the lowest level in infinite light. We can say this is also the intention in the Likutei Torah there in the Bir, the explanation of Shcherani, Ba'amoshel, the Nimshel, the Sefer Shalbein, and Perek and Aleph. In the example, and in what the example comes to explain, in Tanya, chapter 51, Be'inyan Keiches HaNefesh. What does he say there? About the faculties of the soul. She'ein an atzmus HaNefesh. They're not the essence of the soul. He spoke about this earlier as well. How do the faculties rest within the soul? We know they're not the essence of the soul. There's 613 faculties, different types of faculties and energies that are encompassed within the soul. And they manifest in the mind, because the mind is the central nervous system. So they manifest in the mind, and from the mind, it transmits to all the organs and parts of the body. What's the nimshal? The nimshal the keches haklun benefesh hu ins sefirot gruzes bechinas atik da'ak haklun bein sof habligvul. The nefesh is like the bligvul, like I said. And what is the example of the keches, the faculties that are encompassed in it? That's the 10 hidden spheres, the level of atik of ak, like he said, which are encompassed in the infinite light that's beyond its spheres. The Ayin Beis hu Ayin hashara hanal. This in being encompassed is the hashara hanal, is this envisioning that I mentioned above. And from this was transmitted the kav, the thin ray of light, that manifests and dresses up in arich. This is ak. It manifests in arich. So from atik, which is the envisioning of the image of the structure, from there emerged and is transmitted the kav, which creates the next level, arich, of the all-encompassing so-called macrocosmic arich, which is ak. Yeah. The nimtza, so we can see from this, the b'chinas es, we see from this that the 10 hidden spheres, as they're encompassed in Ein Sof, not actual spheres, but how he envisions them, this is what we mean by achrena. So there's no bottom up, top and bottom. Achrena meaning a level that is beginning to become defined in himself. We can say this is in general Malchus the Ein Sof B'chlal. In general. And even though the infinite light, you can't say 10 spheres, rather only infinite spheres as he mentioned before. So then how do we reconcile the two? The Inyan in this is the Hinei, this Bar L'il, Perek Tazayin. Because now we explained earlier in chapter 16, the Sfiras Ein Ketz, Hainu Shem B'chinas Bli Gvul. Sfiras Ein Ketz, infinite amount of spheres, means that they're infinite. They're Bli Gvul, they have no limits, no parameters. Omnam Hashodas, Hamshachas B'chinas Gvul, Yesh Leim B'chinas Hamalchus Bein Seif HaBli Gvul. However, the envisioning, the imagining, of this transmission, which is in a form of Gvul, a transmission of Gvul, Yashlemi, you can say this is the Malchus with an Ein Seif HaBli Gvul. How does he answer the question? I'm not sure. Okay, he's saying it's the Malchus of Ein Sof HaBli Gvul. It is the Ein Sof Bli Gvul, but the Malchus of it is when he envisions. In other words, Bli Gvul is envisioning, but then it's a part of the Bli Gvul. And we said before it's not part. Okay. Ayin Beis is the common Perek. Look later, Perek chapter. He says it's not chapter anymore. It's Vahi Ayin and Tofresh Ayin Hey. It's in the second volume, page 935. Okay. Umesham Yuvan Khan, and from there we'll understand here. So I guess we have to look there to really understand the answer. I'll look it up. And then in parentheses, he concludes in this chapter, Rabbi the Inyan and the explanation of this Yesh Leimer, we can say, according to what it says elsewhere, Shal Malchus Nikra Regel, the Malchus, the lowest level, is called leg, the Fishabah Vayodei, because in it and through it, Hamshachim Me'elam Elyon Le'elam Atachton, is the transmission from a higher world to the lower world, the Haino Hamshachim Me'muhus Le'muhus, which is a transmission from one personality to another. Like from Atzilut to Biyah, complete different personality. The same thing we can say in the infinite light before the Tzimtzum, that the envisioning that there should be a transmission in a form of Gvul, of finite, that's the level of Malchus. So he's adding this regal. Okay, because Malchus is like the bridge between the two worlds. So also Malchus, the Ein Sof, is the bridge. Kitzer, summary. The example for this is that before the Tzimtzum, the infinite light radiated on the 10 hidden spheres, including the Eira Ela Al Kulana, beyond the synergy, the higher synergy. And the concealment was in two things: siluk, Eira, and safe. The removal, so to speak, of the infinite sheyeh Atzilus spheratic pratis. And the second thing was that there should be the emanation of one individual sphere. Because the root of energies, as we said, that is similar to the light, the transcendent in nature. It's not exactly, it's minkov, it's from the same material of the makif, of the sev garment, of the garment. And we can say this is the lowest level of this was what means by the lowest level of the energy. Because what's their hiskalusa? What means that they are joined together, they're encompassed in one another? It means that the infinite light envisioned that it would radiate in finite. The question then is, why is it min kanaf? Why is it not the kanaf itself? Because I guess the gvul part is not. Okay, I'll have to go through this. This envisioning is in the level of malchus, and everything was encompassed in the infinite light. I have to look up elsewhere because clearly he's saying, in the beginning he said it's not the bli gvul that's envisioning gvul, it's and here he does say it's envisioning, so if that's the case, then they are one. And yet it's sefirot hagnuzas. He must mean that once he envisions it, the thing that he envisions is not part of what was before. It's the part of the before that allowed this to emerge. But this does not have that in it. Only the similarity of transcendence. Something like that is what I would think it would be. So the bli gvul includes the gvul within it, but the gvul does not have all of the bli gvul because it's 10 spheres, not infinite spheres. But it retains the personality of transcendence, that it does, which the containers don't have, and they're like even not the tzitzis. They're outside, they're the container. They're not even part of the... Okay, let's conclude here. Chapter 27, page 43 and 44.